Discover the touching tale of a young mechanic girl who amazingly transforms a Hell's Angel's life. The engine roared like a lion in the summer heat, pounding through the streets of the small Midwestern town where Lila grew up. The scent of motor oil hung in the air, a familiar embrace that filled her lungs as she toiled away in her father's auto shop. Every clanging tool echoed like the beats of her heart, igniting a fire in her soul. Lila was not just a mechanic's daughter. She was destined to inherit the legacy of grease-stained hands and a heart full of dreams. But the world around her had labeled her a fool, merely a girl in a man's world, dismissing her fierce drive and incredible skill as mechanics. That Lila's father, a Vietnam veteran, had always told her stories of resilience, hard work, and honor. He'd repeat, eyes glimmering with memories. Yet his gentle smile belied the shadows that flickered behind it, the ghosts of war, the scars of a turbulent past. As Lila embraced her passion, she felt the weight of his protection tighten around her, especially with rumors swirling of Razor, the infamous Hell's Angel, storming into town. The whispers and the gnawing fear among the townsfolk wound through her like a tightening noose, constricting around the memories of her father's warnings. Days turned into anxious nights as Razor's gang terrorized local businesses, their leather jackets a menacing shroud. Lila watched the townspeople retreat into judgment and prejudice, fearing what they did not understand. In that moment, with the shadows of fear looming larger than life, Lila felt an unyielding urge to break free from her father's protective cocoon. She took a deep breath, heart racing, and made a decision that would forever alter the trajectory of her life. She would confront Razor herself. With adrenaline surging through her veins, Lila challenged him to a street race. It wasn't just about speed. It was about proving her worth as a mechanic, as a woman ready to shatter the glass ceiling that loomed above her. The streets pulsed with excitement as engines revved and the crowd buzzed around them. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears as she visualized the glimmers of hope this could bring, not just for her, but for the entire town. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The race roared to life, engines thundering like a wild storm. Lila pushed her car to its limits, weaving through the tension of the moment. But as they sped through the town, she caught a glimpse of Razor, a man too often misunderstood. Beneath the facade of bravado was heartbreak. He'd known loss, neglect, and was searching for acceptance in a world that had cast him aside. As their eyes met, they discovered something profound in that fleeting moment. A connection forged not through hate, but through shared humanity. Lila realized that maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide together. This was more than just a race. It was about healing of themselves and the fractured town around them. With each passing second, Lila felt the weight of the world shift. Could she and Razor unite their broken paths? Would the townspeople see beyond their masks? As the dust settled and their lives intertwined, the stage was set for a reckoning. Would the town embrace the truths that Lila and Razor would unearth, or would fear continue to reign? A question hung heavy in the air, and Lila knew that their journey had only just begun. Lila's heart raced as she felt the powerful pulse of the engines beneath her palms, a symphony of metal and thunder resonating through the air. The crowd's roar surged around her, a collective heartbeat pushing her mind into overdrive. She could feel the weight of their expectations and fears, swirling as vigorously as the dust kicked up by the speeding cars. Razor drove like a fierce storm. His motorcycle seemed an extension of himself, swift, wild, and unpredictable. Lila focused on the road ahead, the familiar bends and turns of her town renewing her sense of belonging. With each shift of gears, she silenced the doubts that whispered in her ears. This was not merely about winning a race. It was about rewriting narratives, her own and Razor's. As they rounded the final curve, Razor pulled ahead, and Lila felt a pang of defeat. But in that moment, the memory of her father's stories flooded her. Honor is keeping your word, even when it's hard. She knew then that she had to press on, defying the odds despite her fears. She tightened her grip, driving with a fierce determination that ignited her spirit. Razor glanced back at her, his eyes narrowing. There was something in that glance, a mix of respect and surprise that made her heartbeat echo louder. He wasn't just an enemy. He was a survivor, much like her, and in that realization, she found strength. The roaring engines faded, and all that remained was the rush of the moment. Lila surged forward, finding an opening as they approached the finish line. The crowd erupted in cheers, but amidst the chaos, all she could hear was the pounding of her own pulse in her ears. She closed her eyes briefly, believing, hoping, that this was her moment. In an electrifying finale, Lila's car edged ahead, crossing the finish line just a heartbeat before Razor. The crowd exploded. Lila lifted her hands in triumph, not just for win but for possibilities, dreams, and the power of belief. Razor slowed beside her, his face a mask of astonishment. "Damn, girl," he breathed, pulling off his helmet, his eyes locking onto hers. It was a look that spoke volumes. She stepped out of her car, adrenaline surging through her like wildfire. "It's not just about speed, Razor. It's about changing the way people see us." He nodded slowly, an ember of understanding kindling between them. The crowd had begun to disperse, but Lila sensed a shift. The fear that once clung to the townspeople was replaced with curiosity. Maybe, she thought, they could start healing. Razor approached her, his posture softening. "Maybe I wasn't wrong about you after all," he admitted, a flicker of sincerity glinting in his eyes. Lila smiled, her heart swelling with hope. They could change things together, break down the barriers that had held them both captive. But just as Lila reveled in the moment, a loud crash echoed in the distance. A police siren wailed, cutting through the buzz of excitement. Lila's stomach twisted. Would the town turn against Razor now? Would fear invade this joy? What would it take to unite their fractured worlds when old prejudices threatened to resurface? As the sirens drew closer, Lila felt a fresh wave of urgency wash over her. Their journey was only beginning, and the real race was just around the corner. Would they choose to run toward understanding or flee from it? Lila's heart sank as the unmistakable sound of sirens pierced the air, rattling the exhilarating high of her victory. The thrill that had surged through her moments before dissipated like mist under the bright sun. She turned toward the noise, her stomach knotting tight with anxiety. Razor's celebration should have been a moment of warmth and unity, but now it felt like a fuse had been lit, threatening to ignite the old fears that shadowed them both. "Stay calm," she reminded herself, but doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. The crowd around them erupted into murmurs, glancing nervously in the direction of the approaching sirens. Lila felt their eyes, wide and expectant. Would they see Razor as the villain again? Would they forget the progress they made in an instant? Razor stepped closer, his brow furrowed as he sensed the shift in energy. "Let us get out of here," he said, his voice less boisterous, more serious now. But Lila didn't want to run. She didn't want to let this moment slip through her fingers, the chance at something greater than victory. Understanding. "Wait," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We can't just let them go back to the way things were. We have to face this together." Razor's jaw tightened, skepticism flickering in his eyes. "And how do you propose we do that, Lila? Talk them down while the cops are rolling in?" She took a deep breath, her mind racing, searching for the right words. "We show them who we really are. You're not just a Hellas angel, and I'm not just, well, whatever they think I am. We can change the narrative." He looked at her, uncertainty crossing his face. But just then, a loud cheer erupted in the distance. A group of supporters had formed, rallying behind her. They were chanting her name, lifting banners that expressed as much. Lila's heart swelled. "See," she said, pointing toward the enthusiastic crowd. "They want to believe in something different. For a moment, they saw us as we are a part of the same community, in this together." Razor glanced back at the lingering crowd, and she could see the battle in his eyes, the instinct to bolt versus the desire to stick it out. Deep down, he wanted this as much as she did. Lila stepped closer, her voice low. "You once told me that this town needed someone to challenge the status quo. Why not let that someone be us, right here, right now?" A slow smile began to break across Razor's face, the corners of his mouth lifting as the rhythm of the crowd reached him. It was like the tide shifting, pulling the two of them closer to the shore of possibility. Lila felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Maybe this could be their moment, their stand. As the sirens grew louder, Lila took a step forward, determined. Let us talk to them. Not as enemies, but as allies who want to forge something better. But just then, the police cars rounded the corner, sirens blaring emphatically, a wall of authority ready to lay down the law. Lila's heart raced again, and for a split second, she felt frozen, fear creeping back in. Would they choose to stand firm against fear? Would the courage they found together be enough this time when confronted by that age-old battle to fight for understanding in a world full of division? Razor, she whispered, eyes locking on his. His response was a gradual nod, but it brimmed with intent. Together, they would face whatever came next. Would they rally the crowd into a message of unity, or would they be drowned out by the noise of distrust? Lila could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them as they stood on the edge of change. What would they say when the time came to speak? The real question lingered, heavy in the air. Were they truly ready to fight for that change? The police cars screeched to a halt, lights spinning like a disco ball of chaos. Tension hovered thick in the air as officers stepped out, their expressions rigid and their uniforms a reminder of the authority that had long intimidated Razor's crew. Lila could see the fear creeping into the faces of her supporters, the laughter and cheers of moments ago fading into an anxious silence. Together, she whispered, her eyes still locked onto Razor's. It was a simple word, carrying the weight of everything they had fought for. Razor nodded again, his jaw set. She could sense the determination brewing within him. "We don't want any trouble," shouted one of the officers. "Back up and clear the area." Commanding authority cut through the murmur of fear, and Lila felt her heart tug. It would have been easy to retreat, to take a step back into the shadows, but she squeezed Razor's hand instead, a lifeline in this storm. "Razor," she said, raising her voice slightly so it could reach the crowd. "This isn't just about us. It's about them too." A ripple of uncertainty spread through the crowd, but a few heads nodded, emboldened by her words. Lila's stomach churned with a mix of hope and dread. She took a bold step toward the officers, her heart thudding in her chest. "We're not here to cause problems. We want to talk." The younger officer hesitated, glancing between Lila and his superior. His face softened, caught in the swell of the community tension. Yet, the lead officer clenched his jaw and stepped forward, his voice commanding. "You need to disperse now. This area is not safe for gatherings." "Is it safe for us?" Razor's voice cut in, firm yet subdued. He stepped beside Lila, his imposing figure drawing the attention of both the officers and the crowd alike. She felt him shift with confidence, weaving the tension into an opportunity. "Look around," Razor continued, his eyes scanning the faces of both their supporters and the anxious officers. "We're not your enemy. We just want a chance to change things, to prove that we're more than the labels you force on us." A glance among the officers, hesitant and questioning. Lila's heart thumped louder. Was this their moment? Could they really break the cycle of fear and misunderstanding? "Is that what you really want?" the lead officer asked, his voice dropping slightly as the crowd buzzed with anticipation. "Prove it." His eyes narrowed, a challenge wrapped in disbelief. "Show us you can be responsible." "Just give us a minute," Lila pleaded. "When have you seen a Hells Angel and a mechanic standing together, trying to build something instead of destroying it? We need a chance to talk, not shout." The murmur of the crowd solidified into a chant of support, gathering power with every syllable. Lila could feel it vibrate through her, overwhelming the fear that threatened to consume her. "Please, we want to show you who we can be." The lead officer shifted, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. He looked at his partner, who offered a slight nod, as if to say maybe it was worth hearing them out. Lila held her breath, praying it was enough. But just as the atmosphere seemed to shift, an even louder sound echoed in the distance, more sirens, deeper sounds of authority rolling in like an approaching storm. Fear rippled through the crowd once again, voices growing quiet and anxious. Lila's stomach dropped. "Not now, not again," she murmured, panic rising. Razor turned sharply, his eyes flashing with alarm, but he steeled himself. "Lila," he said, urgency building. "We have to make them believe us before it's too late." The clock was ticking. The stakes raised. Could they convince their community to unify against the forces that sought to divide them? Or would this tide sweep them away before they had a chance to find common ground? In that moment, Lila felt an electric charge of determination. This wasn't over yet. They still had a fight ahead. "Let us show them who we really are," she said, voice steady, drawing from the strength of that rising chant. They had one shot. Would it be enough to alter the tide of distrust about to crash down upon them? The sirens howled louder, a relentless reminder of the looming threat. Lila could feel the weight of that sound pressing down on her chest, squeezing the breath from her lungs, but she refused to let the anxiety swallow her whole. The crowd around her began to stir, faces shifting from support to fear, and she knew that panic was a powerful adversary. "Listen," she shouted, her voice cutting through the growing noise, desperate to regain control. "We've faced worse than this together. Remember why we're here." Razor stepped closer, his presence a comforting wall against the rising tide. He scanned the crowd, his expression fierce but hopeful. "You all know us. You know our story. We're tired of the labels, tired of being stuck in a dance of fear. It's time to change the rhythm." The murmur of voices softened, tentative yet rising in courage. Lila's heart raced as she recognized the shift, their collective spirit pushing back against the fear. She gripped Razor's hand tighter, a blend of adrenaline and hope coursing through her veins. With every chant that emerged from the crowd, the oppressive winds of uncertainty began to calm. "Please," she shouted, looking from face to face, catching glimpses of fear and uncertainty morphing into resolve. "We want a chance to make things right. Just give us a moment." The younger officer shifted again, the uncertainty etched on his face, fragile like glass. Lila's gaze flickered to the lead officer as he seemed to weigh his options, his expression a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Was all this just a facade, or could they genuinely change something? "Step forward if you believe in this," Razor called out, letting go of Lila's hand. He took a step into the space between the officers and the crowd, drawing forward an air of raw defiance. Lila's heart raced faster. Would it backfire? One by one, faces began to emerge from the crowd. A woman with piercing blue hair stepped forward first, leading a wave of others. They moved in solidarity, each step a statement, turning apprehension into a statement of strength. Lila felt her heart swell, pride mixing with fear as she sensed their daring resolve. "See," Razor said, his voice steady, building the energy around them. "We're not just a collection of labels. We're human beings looking for a chance." The lead officer squinted against the growing tension, obviously grappling with his instinct to pull back and the signs of hope rising in front of him. "I need to think about what to do next," he said finally, his voice tight but less certain than before. The approach of sirens grew louder. The approaching storm demanded their attention once more. Lila's stomach twisted. What if this was their only chance to prove they belonged, to show their humanity? She looked at Razor, and he nodded, his eyes fierce with determination. "We're ready to take it from here," he said, stepping forward, the wind catching at his leather jacket. Lila stole a glance back at the crowd. They were waiting, breathless, hearts in their throats. It was then she realized that the police might not just see a motorcycle gang and a struggling community, but the power of unity, the strength found in standing together against all odds. With the sirens drawing closer, Lila felt a rush surge through her, igniting a new fire. "No matter what happens next," she declared, raising her voice higher, "we've got each other. Together, we might just create the change this place needs. Are we willing to fight for that?" A thunderous yes erupted from their ranks, shaking the ground beneath her feet. But before Lila could bask in the warm glow of unity, a chilling voice cut through the energy. "This is Officer Becker. You have 10 seconds to disperse, or we will take action." Lila's heart sank like a stone. The moment of truth had arrived, but their fight was only just beginning. Did they have what it would take to stand in the face of impending conflict? Would they truly be able to hold on to the fragile thing they built before the storm hit? A wave of determination swept over Lila as the countdown began. They would not back down. Not now. The countdown echoed in Lila's ears, each second slicing through the fire of determination that had ignited within her. The faces of those around her no longer seemed just troubled silhouettes, but brave avatars of hope. She could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the crowd, thumping louder, synchronizing with her own racing pulse. Then the voice of Officer Becker rang out, but Lila couldn't let a countdown define them. "Don't move, don't break," she shouted, an electric confidence charging her tone. "We stand together, no one is turning back." The words blurred into a fog of urgency, but Lila's heart swelled with defiance instead. "They think they can scare us," Razor shouted. "But fear is only a prison if we choose to let it bind us." The officer's voice wavered, a hint of uncertainty creeping in. "Stand up for each other," Lila called out. "What we have built here is more than a gathering. It's a family, and families protect one another." The crowd began to shift, restless but resolute. Lila could see the lines of anxiety etched on their faces starting to dissolve into expressions of strength. "Remember how far we've come," Razor added. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who feels lost and unheard. We won't let them take that away." For each second felt like an hour stretched out, but hope surged like wildfire. Lila took a step forward, her heart surging. "For every sleepless night, for every tear shed, for every moment we fought alone, we come here united. Together, we rise." She noticed a young boy, barely 12, standing next to his mother, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. He looked up, eyes wide with fear, but there was something else there, too, a flicker of courage. "That's right." Lila smiled at him. "You show them that love is louder than hate. We are not just a sum of our parts. We are a beat that cannot be silenced." Lila could feel the swell of energy pulsating through the crowd, a tide of hope washing over each face. "Let us no longer be shadows living on the edges." Razor's voice rang through the arms of the assembly, ironclad and strong. "Let us be the light that shines." The countdown ended, but silence fell, thick and pregnant with possibility. Officer Becker's gaze flickered, uncertain, and in that moment, Lila saw a window and opportunity hanging in the air. "Let us be heard," Lila shouted, raising her voice as if it could shatter the looming tension. "If we go down, let's go down fighting together." A thunderous roar erupted from their ranks, voices mingling together, creating a wave that crashed against the feet of the officers. They weren't just shouting at the police. They were reclaiming their narrative, their existence. The lead officer lowered his gaze, the uncertainty amplifying in his eyes. Lila could see it, the flicker of hope reflected back at her. But would he act on it? Just then, a hand shot forward from the back of the crowd. It was the woman with the blue hair. "We demand to be treated with respect. We refuse to go back to being invisible." The ground shook beneath them, and Lila felt the weight of the moment. Officers were shifting, murmurs traveling among them like a flickering flame. The atmosphere crackled with tension, but Lila sensed the air growing heavier with expectation, anticipation alive in the balance. This was it, everything they had fought for was hanging by a thin thread of understanding. In the next instant, Officer Becker took a step forward. "Enough. You're asking for respect. But are you ready to show it?" Lila's heart raced. That question echoed in her mind, facing her like a specter. Were they prepared to rise above all they had been labeled as? As she opened her mouth to respond, the ground trembled under the weight of fate, pushing them into a moment they never anticipated. What would that next step look like? The choice lay before them, hanging in the thick, electric air. Would they meet Becker's challenge head-on, or would they falter at the threshold of change? Lila took a steady breath, feeling the charged energy wrap around her like a warm blanket. She stood at the edge of a defining moment, each heartbeat fueled by the courage of the faces around her. The young boy still clutched his teddy bear, and his mother's hand tightened around his shoulder, a silent show of support. "Yes," Lila shouted, as if she could speak for them all. "We are ready. Ready to show the world that we're more than labels. We are here, and we matter." In that moment, the crowd mirrored her resolve. A chorus of voices rose, fueled by passion and history. "We matter. We matter." They echoed, a chant that seemed to rise like smoke into the sky. Lila turned her gaze back to Becker, and she saw the tension in his shoulders, the fight in his eyes, and yet, the flicker of doubt. "What do you want from us, officer?" she cried out, the vulnerability tangled with her fierce determination. "Respect is a two-way street." Becker hesitated. "Listen," he began, almost softly, but Lila caught the challenge simmering in his tone. If you want respect, you need to show me you are ready to handle the consequences of what that means. A silence fell as the crowd listened, that heavy silence pregnant with possibility. Lila's mind raced. She could feel uncertainty creeping in. What did it mean to show respect? Would it require them to give up their anger, their pain? But history had taught them that respect was earned, not given. We've been pushed down so many times, Razor shouted, cutting through the silence. Why should we hide who we are to make someone else comfortable? Exactly, Lila called back, her heart pounding in her chest. Our scars tell the story of our fight. We can't erase them for your comfort. We demand to be seen as we are. As the crowd erupted into voice once more, Lila focused back on Becker. She sensed the shift. It wasn't just a standoff anymore. It felt like a negotiation, a moment that could reshape everything. If they backed down now, it would be another loss, a surrender to the very forces that had kept them silent. What if? Becker's voice broke through the din. He glanced at his fellow officers, a moment of uncertainty painted across his face. What if I listened to you? Really listen? Whispers spread through the crowd. Lila's stomach flipped. Could this be happening? Were they truly on the verge of a breakthrough? A woman with fierce green eyes stepped forward beside Lila, her voice steady. Listening isn't enough. We need action. We need change. Razor nodded. Change based on your commitment to us, to our stories. We are tired of empty promises. The electric atmosphere wrapped around Lila like a warm embrace, but urgency throbbed beneath. They had pushed boundaries, but they had to make something real from this moment. Tell us what you will do, Lila urged, making eye contact with Becker. She needed to draw him in, to touch the humanity that had brought them here. What steps will you take to make this a conversation, not just an argument? For a moment, Becker stood there, vulnerability etched on his face. Lila could see the turmoil of his position, the rising conflict between duty and honor. Okay, he finally replied. Let us sit down and talk. All of you. Gasping breaths swept through the crowd, a mixture of shock and hope flooding their hearts. Lila took a small step, barely feeling the earth beneath her feet. Change was closer than ever. But would Becker truly commit, or would there still be obstacles ahead? The answer loomed like a shadow, just out of reach, and Lila's heart raced with both anticipation and fear. This moment felt pivotal, but what would come next? Would their dreams of respect and dialogue take flight, or crash against the harsh walls built of mistrust? Lila could only wait while the world around her held its breath, searching for the spark of transformation. The air was thick, charged with anticipation. Lila could feel the weight of every eye on her, the crowd waiting for her to take the next step. Her mind whirled, grappling with the magnitude of Becker's offer. Sit down and talk. Those words echoed in her ears like a melody, sweet yet tinged with doubt. Can we trust him? A voice behind her muttered, thick with skepticism. Lila turned to see an older man with graying hair, his mouth set in a grim line. Trust is built, not given, she replied, surprising even herself with the firmness in her voice. But this is a start. We have to take it. She felt the energy rise again, the tentative hope beginning to swell among the crowd. They had fought for too long to let fear stand in their way. Now that A.S. Becker gestured toward a clearing at the edge of the park. Lila took a deep breath, beckoning her fellow advocates forward. Let us do this together, she urged, as they slowly began to move. Razor walked beside her, his jaw tight, but resolved. They were taking a risk, that much was clear. As they reached the designated area, Becker stood against the concrete backdrop, his fellow officers fanning out behind him, arms crossed defensively. The crowd's shifting whispers underscored the vulnerability of the moment. One small spark could either ignite or extinguish this fragile flame of dialogue. I need to know your stories, Becker began, his voice steady but not without a trace of uncertainty. Lila could see the sincerity etched in the lines on his face. Not just the headlines. I want to understand what brought you here. A hush fell over the assembly, and Lila sensed an opportunity. The crowd was restless, ready to release the pent-up emotions they had carried for so long. Who wants to go first? She asked, looking around. It felt like standing on the edge of a diving board. There was no turning back that a young woman stepped forward, her voice trembling yet vibrant. I grew up in a neighborhood where sirens were a constant lullaby, where the police and the community were at war instead of allies. Tears shimmered in her eyes, and Lila felt the knot in her throat tighten. I carry the weight of that history. It shapes how I see the world. Becker listened intently, nodding as she spoke. Lila felt a ripple of reassurance spread through the crowd. Was he really absorbing their pain? Was he listening? One by one, voices spilled forth stories of violent confrontations, moments of neglect, struggling to be heard, to belong. Each narrative tangled with the frustrations of a system that had failed too many. As the sun dipped lower, the light casting long shadows on the pavement, Lila felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, warming her heart. Each story shared was like a stone cast in still water, creating ripples of understanding between their two worlds. Becker was speaking less like an officer and more like a man confronted with the reality of his community. Suddenly, Razor stepped up, his anger palpable. But we've been listening to empty promises for years. You ask us to trust you, but how can we be sure this time will be different? Lila's heart raced. Razor's words were raw, but they needed to be said. Change wasn't just a conversation. It required action, accountability. She knew this was all on the line. Becker shifted, the tension in his body evident. You're right, he said slowly, glancing around at his fellow officers. But I'm standing here today, ready to open the door to a new beginning. I want our department to recognize the trauma in this community and take tangible steps forward. But I need you to meet me halfway. Lila's breath caught. This wasn't just a vague promise. What did it mean? What were those steps? The crowd held its breath, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Just as Lila opened her mouth to respond, a loud crash echoed from behind them, a metallic clanging that shattered the fragile atmosphere. Turning sharply, she could see chaos unfolding down the street, a confrontation breaking out between another group and the police. Her heart sank. Could they lose this moment before it even had a chance to take root? Lila looked back at Becker, fear flickering in her chest. Would this alter their fragile moment? Would it pull them back into the darkness? The stakes felt higher than ever, and Lila knew she had to act fast. But what would happen next? Lila's heart raced as the sounds of chaos grew louder. Shouts echoed through the air, mingling with the deep rumble of engines revving and the sharp crack of sounds that made it feel like everything was imploding. She couldn't let fear paralyze her. This was a pivotal moment, and if there was ever a time to act, it was now. Stay together, she called out to the crowd, her voice rising above the din. She turned back to Becker, meeting his gaze. We need to keep this conversation going. If we let fear take over now, it could ruin everything. Becker's expression steeled as he surveyed the situation, his features hardening. You're right. We can't let them distract us. We can't, he trailed off, his eyes narrowing as he watched officers repositioning themselves. Somebody's got to step up, Lila said, taking a step forward. We can't let this be a missed opportunity. We need to show that we want peace, not violence. Razor stood at her side, fury still simmering in his eyes. What if they don't listen? They've always been deaf to our pleas. Then we show them we want to back down. Together. Lila took a deep, shaky breath. Her voice quivered, but was filled with resolve. We keep sharing our stories. We keep fighting for what's right. They need to see that a community can stand strong, even when they try to tear it apart. Becker nodded slowly, his eyes locked on Lila with a newfound respect. All right, let us do it. We'll stay here and let our voices be heard. With that, Lila began to transcend her nerves. She called out for anyone willing to share. A man stepped forward, his face lined with sadness, but determination shone in his gaze. My son was arrested for something he didn't do, he said, choking on the words. I know what it's like to see a child suffer at the hands of those we're supposed to trust. It's been years, and we still haven't been treated like human beings. The man's raw emotion hung in the air, a thread that connected the crowd to Becker and the officers standing behind him. His story was met with nods and murmurs. Others were remembering similar experiences, their brows furrowing in empathy. Lila watched as Becker leaned forward, almost instinctively, wanting to connect with this father's pain. She felt hope ignite again. One by one, the walls between the two groups started to fracture, but then a loud crash erupted again. A protester had thrown something, and the atmosphere thickened with tension. Becker's officers immediately tensed, hands hovering over their belts. No, Lila shouted, desperate to keep things from escalating. We're here to talk, to listen. This is our moment. There was a moment of silence, like everyone was holding their breath. Becker pinched his lips together, and Lila could see the internal struggle on his face. "Let them express their anger," he finally said, looking at his officers. "This is what they feel, even if it scares us." The crowd erupted with passionate voices, frustrations crashing over each other. But Lila sensed that now they were channeling their energy, not into violence, but into a unified outcry for change. They could feel the momentum shifting. Just as hope started to swell once more, Lila noticed something behind Becker. A pair of officers were moving toward the gathered crowd, their steps heavy with authority. Lila's heart plummeted. Would they bring the chaos closer, or could Becker keep them at bay? "Stay strong. Keep your voices rising," she urged, stepping slightly in front of Razor and the others to shield them like a wall of resilience. Her words hung in the air like a lifeline, but would they hold? Could they really maintain the fragile thread of connection they'd spun? Lila watched Becker with anticipation, wondering if this moment could be a turning point or if it would all come crashing down. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down heavily. What might happen next could change everything they knew, forever. The moment held tight, like a breath caught in someone's throat. Lila's heart surged as the cries of the crowd echoed in her ears, a growing wave of uncertainty and urgency. Becker stood between them, a fragile bridge in this landscape of tension. It felt like standing on a precipice, the ground trembling beneath their feet. "Listen," Lila shouted, urgency threading through her voice. "We need to keep talking. We need each other now more than ever." Fear flickered among the faces around her, but she held their gaze, firm and steadfast. This was their moment, the chance to rewrite the narrative that had haunted them for too long. Suddenly, Becker stepped forward, arms raised. "Everyone, I know it's hard, but we can't let the anger drown out the dialogue we've begun. We must keep our focus." His voice rang out, surprising many, but it was clear that his words held weight. The murmurs of the crowd shifted, attention returning to him. "Together, we need to forge a path forward." Becker continued, "We can't let violence become the narrative. You've all shown courage today, let us not waste it." Lila's heart raced at the change brewing in Becker's demeanor. Maybe there was hope after all. "Let us prove we're more than the labels we wear." Razor shouted, conviction breaking through his earlier anger. The crowd buzzed with renewed energy, thoughts swirling, minds opening. Lila watched as Becker's fellow officers began to relax, hesitance turning to resolve. "Tell us how we can help," one officer said, stepping forward. Lila felt a wave of emotion crash over her. Maybe they could channel this moment into something transformative. She raised her voice, her passion buoyed by the budding unity. "Let us build workshops to foster understanding, to share our stories. Let us create a youth council that includes voices from all sides." The crowd's enthusiasm ignited. "Yes," shouted a voice in the back. "Let South make this place a home for everyone." More voices joined in, echoing her spirit, momentum swelling like a tide. "Together," Lila roared, fists pumping into the air. "Let us pave a new road from fear to understanding." As if on cue, Becker nodded solemnly. "We'll work to make that happen," he declared. "But promises come with responsibilities, starting with respect on both sides." He glanced at each officer and then into the sea of faces before him. "We accept your anger, your pain, but we need accountability. This is a partnership." Razor stepped forward again, a fire in his eyes. "We'll be accountable too. We know this isn't a quick fix, but we've got to start somewhere. It's time to heal together." With that, the crowd erupted, a wave of sound crashing over them, a collective heartbeat pushing back against years of silence. Lila felt tears prick at her eyes, her chest swelling with relief and passion. They were ready to fight for understanding, to embrace change, and to face the ghosts of the past together. With each chant, with every voice rising higher, a powerful evolution took root. They were no longer just a collection of fears or labels, but a community forged in connection and hope. Slowly, the officers stepped forward, cautiously approaching the crowd and Becker. "Let us start these conversations," one finally said, his voice warm, inviting. "We're here to listen." The walls of apprehension began to crumble, the barriers between them shifting, dissolving into a new narrative. Lila turned to Razor, their hands brushing in a moment of solidarity. As their eyes met, they both knew the journey towards healing would be a long one. But today marked the beginning. Lila lifted her chin, a determined smile brightening her face amidst the chaos. We will keep our voices loud and unbroken. Together, they turned toward the crowd once more, feeling an unbreakable bond woven in their shared stories, their dreams, and their fight for a better tomorrow. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to the heart of a community ready to rise up and rebuild together, no longer aimed at division, but toward understanding and unity. As the sun dipped low, casting a warm embrace over them, hope painted the street with light. This was just the beginning, and Lila, with Razor at her side, felt the excitement crackle in the air. They would change the world together, one heart, one story at a time. That if you felt this transformation as deeply as Lila and Razor did, now is the moment to make your mark. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss more exclusive stories of hope and change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these incredible transformations reach those who truly need it. Comment your reactions and feelings about this, ending what inspired you the most. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful transformation. You need to support us right now. This is the moment to show your love and help us grow. Don't wait, not even one more second. Let's spread hope together.